Hi guys, welcome back or welcome to Tai Chi Basics. Today we're going to talk about the different types of Tai Chi swords. Now Tai Chi swords fall into three general categories, and these are important to know about because I think for many of us, when we began Tai Chi, we ended up with the wrong sword, or we ended up spending too much money, or we bought one that we liked, but it didn't do anything to develop our Tai Chi, and we ended up having to buy something else later. So I'm going to talk about the three different types of swords so that you know which one to buy and which one to choose. And at the end, I'm going to show you how to test the sword to make sure it works good for Tai Chi and you know which one to pick out. So basically we have wood or practice swords, and nowadays there's also some plastic versions of these. We have the rest of the better looking swords that fall into two categories. One they call firm, which I think is a nice way for saying kind of like a long piece of metal. And then there's responsive. So on the wood aspect, as you'd expect, they're made of wood. They're very difficult to generate energy with. And when I say that, I mean that they don't respond, they're not flexible. But they're great, and they're 12, 18, 20 bucks, and they come in wood or plastic. These are a really good choice if you're starting out. So a lot of people think, oh, I got to get a sword right away. If you're new to Tai Chi and you're new to the sword, get one of these, because the first several months of learning the sword forms are just choreography, facing the right direction, moving in the right direction. And when it's time for you to upgrade, when you learn more of the form, then you have a practice sword for your friends or for your spouses or for your partner to share with. The next category is they look pretty good, and these are tempting because they're not as expensive as a lot of the ones online. But the truth is that, I don't know if you can see this, but it's fairly heavy and it's not balanced. It's a thick metal, and if I were to try to issue energy into this sword, you would hear the pommels rattle, but the sword itself isn't going to move too much. Then at the top of the line, which goes for all sorts of prices, but we're going to talk about you not needing to spend too much, we've got a really responsive sword. And typically these swords, I'll show you the broadsword first, the metal thins out, meaning that the first, the middle, and the top third are different densities on both the straight sword and the broadsword. And when you use the sword, it's balanced, okay, somewhere past the hilt. And it uses well. I want to show you the straight sword here too, because it's kind of the same thing. That we've got beautiful sword, handles can be lacquer, they can be woven. The important part is that the metal itself is responsive and that it moves, okay? So why is this important? When we're working with Tai Chi and we're using muscle, like when we're learning to differentiate between internal movement and external movement, the sword doesn't respond too much. So we want that to happen because in essence, I love the word implement, and the sword is more of an implement or a feedback mechanism to correct posture. So let's say I was punching out with this, and I'm just using my bicep and my tricep. You can see, I'm probably not, like a slight movement in the sword, but you're not going to see a lot. Difference being, if I'm moving from the center, you're going to see some more movement. And if I'm balanced from my center point, which in terms of the straight sword means that there's equal force going in either direction and up and down. You can see that the sword responds to tell me that I'm balanced and that I'm sinking when I'm issuing, and that energy is properly entering the sword. If I were to do that with the wood one, I'll go there first, you'd have to be quite the Tai Chi master to make this one move. And then same thing, the hunk of metal swords, it's very tough to get any type of movement into this metal. You can do it, but if you're developing your internal strength, it's going to be very, very hard for you to do that. So my suggestions are that you start with the wood ones, you skip right past the middle ones, which are really tempting, I know, because they're usually in the $20 to $45 price range. The wood ones are like $15 to $25, $28. But the truth is that there's some beautiful, beautiful responsive swords for not that much more. Yes, there's things online that go into the 300-400s. I honestly don't know why you'd need to pay that much unless you're totally a sword aficionado. At taichibasics.com/gear, you can go and see the swords that we found online that we love and that we recommend to both our students and anyone coming to the website. But in essence, what you want is a sword that eventually tells you whether you're moving with internal or external strength or both, okay? So the easiest way to test a sword is from the most balanced position. And I'm going to show you this both with a broadsword and a straight sword. So in essence, I'm going to take up a horse stance so my feet are a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. I'm going to sit down and I'm bringing both my hand and the sword to me, and I'm just going to issue out and sit simultaneously. And I'll do this facing two directions in the sword. Okay? And without much effort without even issuing, you can see the movement of the sword, and this is what we want in it. The sword form itself also has these beautiful opening motions, and in essence, there should be shaking of the tip in those motions too. The broadsword's a little bit more fun, and it's kind of the same thing where if you do punching out motions, I'll face towards the camera so hopefully you can see the shake. It responds, and if you generate enough energy into it, you can get into the lower third, which tells you that your development's better. New students, you know, you make a little quiver on the tip, you get so excited. After you get the form down and you get motion that doesn't require much energy, you can get into here. And when you get the fa jing matching to your, out of your open hand form into your sword form, you can make the whole sword form move. So within the broadsword form, again, we have these big, broad, open motions that come down, and there should be energy there, that punch forward, that go forward with the blade and go slashing out, okay? And it's important, I think, because in essence, let me show you what bad form looks like. If I'm doing these big broadsword motions, and I forget about my hand without the sword, which happens to everyone, and I'm just concentrating here, it's not going to issue much into that. Whereas the force from the broadsword comes from the balance, which means I've got to sit and I've got to extend both directions, right? And if I do that, I get feedback into the sword. I'll try to face this way. Okay? So, happy sword form, and what you want to be doing, again, start with the wood swords, the plastic ones, I guess those are fine. Wood's the traditional, and then move on up and get yourself a nice one. You've earned it. When I say nice, there's some brilliant swords that start around $70 US, $80 US, and then move up into Crazyville.